You're watching News at Prime. Let's get into this conversation now. There are growing concerns over the justice system's ability to deal with sexual crimes. Both the police and the National Prosecuting Authority have come under fire for the lack of arrests. This is in connection with the 7-year-old Kwekwe's rape case, and to also bring into this equation Pastor Timothy Omotoso's recent acquittal. Let's bring the panel now, and joining me in studio is Gender Equality Commissioner, Advocate Nthabiseng Sepanya-Mogale, and we also are joined via the virtual platform by the NPA's Head of Sexual Offences and Community Affairs spokesperson, Advocate Currie, who both join me for this conversation. To both of you, thank you very much for your time, and it is so appreciated that you have made time for this important conversation. Let me start in studio with you, Advocate Sepanya-Mogale. The Gender Commission, you've described this particular case, the outcome, as a failure of the justice system. For you, what does this ruling expose about the legal or institutional barriers that either continue to fail the survivors and indeed victims of sexual crimes, and add to that perhaps the element that I suspect everyone does not want, whether this outcome silences these victims forever?
Yeah, it does, Xoli. You are correct. It actually is a failure, a big one for that matter, particularly disappointing, because it took a lot of courage for the survivors and victims in the Omotoso matter to come forward. As you know, there was a lapse of time, but also the disabling environment, especially in the Eastern Cape, when they started to come forward and wanted to speak out. The cheerleading for Omotoso and all of that, the bullying that was going with that, the accusations of you are lying, you're discrediting us. So it took gumption, it took guts for those women to come forward. And the face of it was Cheryl Zondi. There were quite a few of them. And the first disappointment started when 31 of the 63 charges were dropped. Those charges relate to other victims and survivors. It's worrying. So you can imagine how they felt at that stage already when they were told, no, we're not going to proceed. But it must be emphasized that why those charges were dropped was because the prosecutor did not follow up on them. The prosecutor did not address those charges. So if you do not address the charges, you are not working towards proving them correct. You're just leaving them hanging in the air. It's a miscarriage of justice. No other way to describe it. It's one thing to pursue charges and then to find that the evidence that you present is not convincing enough to be proven, it has not been proven beyond reasonable doubt. That's one thing. But for you to leave them hanging in the air, 31 of them, until at Section 71 stage, the presiding officer feels, well, there's nothing I can do. You did not address these ones. It's another thing.
Let's bring Advocate Currie into this equation. And Advocate, let me correct the title there, because you actually are the head of the Sexual Offences and Community Affairs within the NPA. This particular unit, Advocate, was it involved in this particular case of Timothy Omotoso and the co-accused?
So thank you for the correction, Xoli. We, as the Sexual Offences and Community Affairs Unit, we do not physically prosecute the matters in court. Our job is to ensure that our prosecutors are trained, that the necessary protocols are in place to ensure that the gender-based violence matters are adequately addressed both at pre-trial stage and at trial stage. So the prosecutors would come from the Director of Public Prosecution's office, which is the one in the Eastern Cape in this case.
Right. So you are involved in the training and making sure that prosecutors are adequately capacitated. Where are the failings then to your assessment of this particular matter? Where are the weaknesses?
Xoli, first of all, I do not have, unfortunately, all of the facts relating to the Omotoso matter. We are waiting on the transcript of the case, which we will study, which to fully comprehend and understand the judgment, one must look at the transcript. But having said that, I want to place on record that the NPA has prioritized gender-based violence for a very long time. And part of that prioritization has been that we provide that training, which encompasses both a training, the theoretical training, if one can call it that, as well as trial advocacy. Which in the trial advocacy, we speak to litigation and how prosecutors are supposed to litigate. So that is available for all of our prosecutors. So when you speak about this particular matter, I need to first investigate and understand what happened in this particular matter. As I said, the transcript will be particularly telling as to what happened in this matter.
Let's bring you back into the conversation, Commissioner Sepanya-Mogale. The justice system, this particular case, has demonstrated just how long and traumatizing the legal process can be for the survivors, for the victims. This judgment in particular, how does it affect public trust, especially among those who want to see justice being done? Does it turn them away, as I've alluded to earlier, possibly for good?
Oh, yes, it turns them away for good, but you must remember, Xoli, that even the reporting when it comes to sexual offenses is very, very low. It is a fraction of the occurrences out there that are reported. That's number one. Then it is a further fraction of those that actually get onto the system, not being discouraged by police officers and other people to get onto the system right up to court level. So what we are seeing in our courts is a, what do they call it? What drop in the ocean?
A drop in the ocean,
yes. A drop in the ocean. Yeah, but Xoli, I just want to clarify something from what my colleague has said. Sexual Offences and Community Affairs Unit is responsible for sexual courts. This country has got specialized sexual offences courts that, yes, fall under the NPA, but under the NPA, they fall under a smaller umbrella, which is Sexual Offences and Community Affairs, soccer unit.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I do not understand when they say that. I don't want to go there, you know, she is my colleague, but I just wanted to put it out there. Labor matters in this country fall under the labor courts and the CCMA, etc. And you cannot have head of labor court say, I don't know what my colleague was saying, and maybe we should not go there. But definitely, I'm confused now. Commercial crimes fall under NPA, but they fall under a smaller umbrella within the bigger umbrella of the NPA.
Right.
You
so
know?
Perhaps let's get clarity before we move on.
Yes.
Let's get clarity. Advocate Currie, Advocate Currie Gamo, let's get that clarity from you, because she makes these examples, the commissioner, that for labor matters you have the labor court. For commercial crimes there are specialized commercial crimes courts that deal with those. What is it about the sexual offenses that is either weak or perhaps underutilized? What do you know at your disposal?
Okay, Xoli, I'm not quite understanding your question, but if I could respond to my colleague. When I say, so yes, you are quite correct. The Sexual Offences and Community Affairs Unit its mandate is gender-based violence, but the prosecutors, the litigators of gender-based violence falls within the various Director of Public Prosecutions divisions. That is how the structure of the NPA is set up. Does that mean that I'm not responsible for sexual offences in this country? No, it does not mean that. As a prosecutor and as a special director, we all take responsibility for what happens in that court. What I am saying is that we rely on the litigation aspect of the gender-based violence cases falls and resorts under the Directors of Public Prosecution, whereas the unit itself was not set up to be a litigation unit, but it was set up to empower the DPP officers across the country to be able to litigate on gender-based violence. So I hope that does
answer the question.
Clarify matters
Okay.
For the Commissioner.
Commissioner, are you answered that this was set up to empower the DPP officers at the various provincial structures?
I will leave it there.
But you clearly are not satisfied.
Yes.
What for you needs to be strengthened, or what for you needs interrogation?
Xoli, Sexual Offences and Community Affairs Unit, when it was set up to be a complete value chain from entry level of a sexual survivor,
yeah,
right up to the point of going to court by the same team that falls under SOCA. Tutuzela care centers fall under that. The Tutuzela blueprint falls under that. The specialized prosecutors who know and deal exclusively or largely with sexual offenses, it's part of that. But I may be confused about how it happens inside the NPA.
Yes.
But what I know is that Sexual Offences Unit was set up to particularly prioritize, as early as 2003, prioritize sexual offenses, set them aside so that there's more efficient and effective prosecution. As early as 2003, efficient and effective prosecution. That is why your Tutuzela care centers are actually in hospitals. Those hospitals, they were supposed to have been dedicated medico-legal people. They were supposed to have been forensic nurses who work with prosecutors, etc., to make the process as trial-ready as possible.
So stop there. Stop there, Commissioner, for a moment, because that's actually very, very educational. Advocate, do we have that? Is that how the system is set up? From what you know?
So, Xoli, yes, thank you for this opportunity. And yes, Commissioner, we have Tutuzela care centers across the country, 66 to be exact. And they are and were specifically set up to provide the full basket of services to our victims, which is the psychosocial, the legal, and the medical services. That is still being done. We have the full chain. We have up until the victim enters, like victim can now, Commissioner, since 2021, actually have a docket opened at a Tutuzela Care Center. They don't need to go to the police station at all. And we have what we call our TCC state advocate who provides that legal service. That legal service is doing prosecutor-guided investigation to ensure that our cases are trial ready. So yes, that service is available. We've just expanded the service to now not only be available for sexual offenses, but for gender-based violence more broadly. What hampers us, Xoli, is that we don't have enough Tutuzela care centers across the country.
Yeah.
So many of our victims don't have the benefit of having access to the services at a Tutuzela care center. And that is something which the NPA, myself, we've been driving the increase of our Thuthuzela centers across the country, Commissioner, you will agree with me, these centers work. They work. And so we need more of them. But it is a bit of an expensive exercise. But I can say, Xoli, that in 2021, there were 55 operational TCCs. In 2025, we have 66 operational TCCs. So we are working very hard to increase the number of Thuthuzela care centers so that our victims can actually come into that safe space which we create at the Thuthuzela and report. The aim is to increase the number of cases that are being reported.
Okay.
And we believe that that would be where the victim should get access.
Advocate, before I move on and bring the Commissioner back into the conversation, when you say the Thuthuzela care centers actually work, yes, they may not be enough, but they do work where they are present. I was reading the story of Matatiele, and I have to mention the publication because they've really done such a thorough job of just tracing back all of the cases that have been reported. And they describe the Thuthuzela Care Center that is in one of the hospitals, because there are two hospitals. There's a private and a public hospital. And they describe a place that is sterile, but perhaps I may not be concerned with the look and feel of the place, perhaps more the staff. The Commissioner says the staff must be adequately trained. They are almost nurses that are there to extract the evidence, which is key to making sure that these cases do not fall apart in court. Are those people indeed adequately trained for that purpose of ensuring that not only is the victim made comfortable, but they themselves are able to carry out their jobs or their duty as expected?
So, Xoli, I would say, yes, they are. Because, and again, I must just stress, the Thuthuzela Care Center, though managed and directed by the NPA, it is really a collaboration between government departments, such as the police, the Department of Health, and of course, the Department of Social Development, because of the various mandates that each of us have. And so we do training not only as NPA with our own people, but we do collective multi-sectoral training, which includes training on social context, how to deal with the victim. And of course, the very important training that is offered by the Department of Health itself, because they provide the forensic service, which you allude to, Xoli. And so they train either the forensic nurse or the doctor to be able to get that evidence for us for purposes of using it later in a court of law. And from an NPA side, we make sure that our victim assistant officer, our TCC coordinator, who is our staff, that they are trained. So we all take responsibility for the training as government departments, but we also do combined training to be able to make sure that we are still giving the necessary services.
Commissioner, let's come back to you, and I wonder whether you are adequately answered by the advocate, but at the same time, I'd like for us to try and move the conversation forward, because what then needs to be answered here today is what urgent changes are needed in order for victims to feel that they're not only protected, but that their cases are ultimately going to result in justice being seen to be done.
I think there needs to be better planning and better implementation. Xoli, in this country, we have what we call the district model. District model has identified a certain number of districts. We've got municipalities, about 284 of them nationwide. I do not understand why up to now, when these municipalities as early as 94, yes, we have been chopping and changing in terms of demarcations and all of that, but up to now, we have never been able to plan in line, at least, with the approved geographical jurisdictions. You know, we talk about 66 Thuthuzela care centers. Where and why and how. That should be what matters. Secondly, then those Thuthuzela care centers, how many people are supposed to be manning them, for a lack of a better phrase, and of which professions are supposed to be part of the Thuthuzela care centers. You know, so all of those things, I'm just making Thuthuzela care centers as an example. But when you look across the board in terms of all our services, you find that the planning is not in line with the need. It's not in line with the magnitude of the problem. You know, so I think that is where we should be going, to actually say, let's go back to the drawing board. Can we afford 284 TCCs? Can we afford 284 clinics? Can we afford 200? Just so that we start somewhere. Yeah. Everything is just too haphazard as we stand now.
Commissioner and Advocate, I want to take a short break. When we return, we are going to conclude this conversation, but perhaps one of the key questions here is, why is it that these cases take so long to conclude? And if and when they do, the outcome you anticipate is not what we heard in the Timothy Omotoso matter. In fact, we'll probably reflect on one of the cases, recent cases, that was concluded, but in this particular case, at least the perpetrator was convicted. I'm talking about the Ndikawa case, but we'll continue the conversation in a moment. You're watching News at Prime. If you're just joining us, you find us in the middle of a conversation on the legal system and whether or not it is failing victims of sexual offences. And still with me is Gender Equality Commissioner, Advocate Nthabiseng Sepanya-Mogale, and we're also joined by the NPA's Head of Sexual Offences and Community Affairs, Advocate Boni Currie. Let's bring you back into the conversation, Advocate. And I'd like to reflect on a different case for a moment now, and it is that involving businesswoman Ndikawa. And that case was concluded this year, luckily, and after a very long time, ultimately, the perpetrator was convicted. It took police, and I'm quoting now from a Daily Maverick article, it took police almost 15 years to arrest the accused, which basically happened in January of 2024. A DNA sample was taken in 2020 and was ultimately matched to that of Kawa only in 2023. Ultimately, Moses Qasha was put behind bars and was put away for a very long time. Just on that element of matching DNA, his DNA, the perpetrator's DNA, was taken in 2020, and it is only in 2023 where you have a match. What is going on with the timeline here? Why does it take so long?
Xoli, I'm not quite sure what happened in that matter and why it would have taken that long, although understand also that the analysis of DNA, of course, is the mandate of the South African Police Service and not the prosecution.
Yes.
But you will also recall that there was a time around about in 2020 when the police had a huge backlog of DNA. And this could be part of the reason why the analysis would have taken that long, because they'd been working or trying to work down a massive, massive backlog, which of course was not assisted because of COVID and all of the other things that happened.
Yeah. So
we in the NPA started in late 2020, October 2020, a project with the police, a DNA project with the police, to ensure that our cases were being prioritized and we were able to receive the various reports from them quicker. And to date, I think we are close to 60,000 reports that we've received from then until now.
Yeah.
But I cannot comment specifically on that matter.
Okay. Perhaps let me bring another one quickly, which is quite topical at the moment. And again, I'm in your hands as to whether or not you are familiar with the details. Justice for Kwekwe, and that is what has captured the country throughout the past week. The understanding is that the prosecutor could not take the case forward. And again, it was owing to DNA, which would not have been forthcoming. I'm not sure what the cases or what the specifics would have been, because some of the detail here is not as forthcoming. What do you know about that case? Because it was reported in October of last year, and according to the NPA, they simply could not take the matter forward. So in the Twetwe matter, what I can confirm is that the victim had gone to a Tutuzela Care Center, was consulted with by the TCC State Advocate. The necessary prosecutor-guided investigation was done. And because a suspect could not be identified at the time, the necessary DNA was taken. And I understand that there was also DNA taken from male persons that could have had access to the child. Mm-hmm. And when the DNA came back, the result came back, if I understood it correctly, it did not reveal, it could not detect foreign DNA on the swab that was sent away. Yeah. So that does pose a conundrum for us as the NPA, but the investigation continues. The child is still receiving psychosocial support, and we will and the investigation will continue. Commissioner, let's come back into studio. Does that at least give hope, what the advocate is saying there, that there is a new project that is intended to quicken particularly the analysis of DNA? But again, I need to go back to my initial question to you about what else needs to change in the system so that victims of sexual crime, their processes or their cases are processed quicker.
Indeed, it's good news to hear this from the NPA, but we also need to look at the entire value chain. Number one, we need to look at the workload of the police officers. A lot of them are tasked with investigating a variety of cases, therefore they do not specialize. And all of those cases have got to be attended to with the agency, especially in the beginning, because people cannot be arrested indefinitely, all sorts of those kinds of things. Secondly, with that workload, then you look at the limited resources because they need to investigate. More and more cars and other equipment is being made available to them, which is good. They need to do that. So we need to look at that. But then when it goes to court, you also unfortunately end up with an overloaded prosecutor. So there starts the never-ending postponements. Yeah. And the prison system is not helping either, because sometimes the accused are not brought to court. So there's automatic postponements of people who were supposed to have been in court and the matter's heard and this and that. It's a bit of a frustrating situation there. So the entire value chain has got to be looked at. But over and above the logistical arrangements, you need to look at the quality of investigator as police officer, the quality of prosecutor to be able to investigate and prosecute and secure a conviction where it is warranted. Then you go to the laboratory services. We've got 3 government laboratories in this country. So Northwest, Mpumalanga, Gauteng are using Pretoria. Yeah. Durban, they had a laboratory. It has closed down as a result of flooding. So they're using Western Cape and Gauteng. Free State is using Pretoria. So once you talk laboratories, you're talking about the preservation of the quality of evidence.
Yeah.
And that in itself is a problem. So whether we can have as many police officers as possible, but if the police officer in Wepener, for example, has to only once a month only drive up to Pretoria to bring the specimens, one wonders, where are they kept? How are they kept? What is the integrity of those specimens by the time they are being analyzed in a laboratory?
Very quickly, Advocate Currie Gamwo, let me ask you this final question. I know that you said there are all kinds of analysis and investigations that have got to be done, specifically related to the Timothy Omotoso case. Is it a far-fetched idea that the prosecuting team on that matter, particularly the previous one, could have deliberately botched this case? I'm just putting it out there because it's something that I think has to be asked. And what happens if indeed it is found that they deliberately botched the case?
Xoli, again, I think the NDPP in a previous interview said that we are busy investigating exactly what happened in this matter. We need to get all of the facts. We are talking about someone's career. We need to get all of the facts to make sure that when we assess what has happened, the necessary steps can be taken. But let me also assure you that an investigation in respect of the prosecutors had already commenced after the close of the state's case last year. And I understand that the report will be sent to the NDPP shortly. And then with regards to the conduct of the prosecutors in this particular matter, as I said, the transcript and the facts will tell us whether or not the conduct of the prosecutor was of such a nature that it was deliberate, done or not, and what impact it had on this particular case. But rest assured that the investigations will happen. Rest assured that there will be a look at every angle of the Omotoso matter by head office itself, and we will then be able to come to a conclusion in respect of the conduct of the prosecutor. But I also just want to end off by saying that, we always stress that for our prosecutors, the IPAC values, integrity, professionalism, accountability, credibility is what we all need to strive for in everything that we do, which includes when we litigate in court. And we hold our prosecutors to account at that high level. We hold all of ourselves to account at that high level. Right. So the facts must first be obtained, the transcript must be obtained, all the documentation must be studied, and it will be for us to conclude what the impact was of the conduct of the prosecutors.
Advocate Bonnie Currie Gamwo, thank you very much for your time. She is with the NPA's Sexual Offences and Community Affairs, the head of that unit, and in studio, Advocate Nthabiseng Sepanya-Mogale, the Gender Equality Commissioner. Thank you very much for your time.